Hey, welcome to Coyote Bushcraft. My name is Reese Fontaine, and today I want to show you one of my favorite forms of friction fire, referred to as the hand drill. The hand drill's been around a really long time. It's probably used at least all the way back 200,000 years ago, and it's used by indigenous people all the way up to today. So it's really stood the test of time, and this is the form of fire making that most indigenous cultures around the world would have been using for a very long time. Today, if you're familiar with primitive forms of friction fire, you see a lot of people doing the bow drill, and that's cool and all, but in terms of actually historically speaking, the hand drill is really what most people were using. And the reason for that is just how simple of a tool it is. I mean, it just consists of rubbing two sticks together, and you're just using your hand to do that. And so because of that, it's really easy to make, and it's really easy to keep track of. And I think one reason a lot of indigenous people use it is it's really easy to make, even just using stone tools, given just how simple it is. So yeah, today I want to take you through the whole process of the primitive fire making process. I want to make a tinder bundle. I collected some sticks here. I want to show you how I go about doing that, and then I want to actually take you through the hand drill process, give you some pro tips, show you some techniques that I use, and hopefully we'll get a fire, and yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so here's everything you need to create fire by hand drill. So right here we have our hearth board. This is made out of yucca wood. This is the lower part of a year-old dry stock, and so the lower part tends to be a little thicker, and I was able to actually carve a little hearth board out of it. And then this is the upper part of the yucca stock, and this is my spindle, and so it tends to be a little skinnier and a little better for the spindle portion. When it comes to picking woods for hand drill, yucca seems to work really well, and it's probably my favorite. But there's a lot of other woods that are available. So for something like your hearth board, you can use a lot of different stuff. So like pawpaw wood works really well. Eastern cedar wood works really good. And then also I find that a lot of deciduous tree roots, dead dry tree roots sticking out of the ground, oftentimes when trees fall over, they'll have big root balls sticking up that can dry out, and that tends to work really well as hearth boards too. For spindle, you just pretty much want an old dried out flower stalk of some sort. So that could be yucca, that could be mullein. I've even seen people use something like goldenrod stalks, and even cattail stalks. But you just want to make sure it's dried out. You can harvest some of these plants live and then let it dry out in a controlled environment such as your house, or you can just find already dead standing dried stalks. Next, I have just a little wood chip here. This is going to catch my ember that I'm hopefully going to create when I'm doing my hand drill. And then I have a knife to cut in my notch onto my fireboard. I have some outer cedar bark that I'm going to fluff up to help make a tinder nest. Also, I have some inner tulip poplar bark from a dead tree that I'm also going to be using to make my tinder nest. And then I have this bandana here, and the reason for that is I like to keep my my yucca, hearthboard, and spindle off of the wet ground. You know, it's been raining the last few days, so the ground's pretty damp, and these are really porous woods that can absorb moisture really easily. So I think every little thing you can do to keep moisture away from your fire kit is really beneficial. So those are all of the components for your hand drill. And one other thing I like to do is also get all of my wood for my fire in advance. Alright, so here's the sticks I've gathered just to get my fire going. So right here I have smaller than matchstick thickness twigs, and a nice bundle of them. Usually you got to get more than you think. A lot of people slack on this part, and then they get their whole fire going and they don't have enough sticks. They're scrambling, and then their fire goes out, and they have to start all over again. So, you know, it's really good to just take the time and to do all this ahead of time. So, smaller than matchstick thickness, Then we have just about matchstick thickness, more or less. And then we have slightly thicker than matchstick thickness. And then finally we have a pile of even a little just bit thicker than that, anywhere from pinky thickness to a little bit skinnier than that. And then this right here is enough to really get my fire going, and that'll buy me time if I need to get bigger pieces of wood later on and stuff, but this will give me a solid base. Okay, so first things first, I need to get my tinder nest all prepared. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start out using this inner tulip poplar bark, and this is really long and stringy, and this will be good to make up the base of my tinder nest. Just gonna kind of spread it all out a little bit here. Then I'm basically just gonna kind of wrap it onto itself. I'm basically almost creating something that kind of resembles a little bird's nest. Kind of take some of these loose ends and tuck it in. You want it to be tight, but not too tight. You want air to be able to flow through it. So that looks pretty good. Then I'm going to take my outer cedar bark, and this stuff is great for getting your fire going. It's probably my favorite thing here in the eastern woodlands to use. So I'm just going to fluff that up. Just going to use my hands for that. Alright, and it doesn't take a ton of this. So I'll take some of that good fluffed up stuff and just place it right into my nest. Get a little bit of that really fine powder at the bottom. Alright, that looks pretty good, and I'll just drop my coal right into the center of the fluff there. Okay, and now I need to burn in my hole for my hand drill. So the way I'm going to go about doing that is I'm going to pick a spot for my fire. So I think I'll go right around here. Just going to use the tip of my knife. Just carve a small divot into my wood here. Okay, and now I'm just going to go ahead and burn it in. I'm just going to give it a few passes, and this is just allowing me to have a reference for where I can put in my notch. So I'm not actually going to be trying to create fire right here. So so that's good right there. You just go to where you start to see some smoke and then stop. You want it to burn into the full width of your spindle. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and cut in my notch. You can see the old notches on these other ones right here. Just going to do the same thing here. It's just like taking out a piece of pie out of your circle that you made. Just be really careful. I mean, like with yucca and a lot of these woods you'll be using for hand drill, they're very soft and it's easy to break them if you're not really careful. I'm just bringing in my notch just shy of the very center of my hole. Just clean it up a little bit. Alright, so you can see how that is just shy of the very center of that hole. And something I like to do just to give myself a little bit of an advantage is I'll come here to the bottom and I'll take my knife. And I'll just ever so slightly flare it out down there. And that's just going to allow a little bit more of a pocket for that dust, a little bit more oxygen to help get that coal going. Alright, now I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to put my chip underneath the notch I cut. And the reason for cutting this notch is as I go to do my hand drill, as I'm making my passes, I'll be producing smoke, and as a result of the burning, it will be producing some charred dust, and that dust is the key to getting your fire going. And so you need to collect that dust into a single spot, and that's what that notch allows for. So as that dust is being formed and that char is being formed, it's going to inevitably fall into that notch. And then that notch will fill up with dust, come to the point where the spindle is spinning. Once it fills up, and it will get hot enough that that dust itself will ignite, and that creates your coal. So now we're ready to go ahead and actually do the hand drill itself and try to get a coal and create a fire. Okay, so I'm about to get ready to do my hand drill. Something I like to do just before I crank one out is I like to take my knife and come to the tip of my spindle here, and I just carve out a little bit of that center pith. Just like that. And that seems to help just a little bit with getting your fire. And if you think about like a wheel turning, the center of that wheel is not really doing much of anything. It's just kind of drag. And so that's kind of the same process with this. Most of the friction is coming from the outer part of your spindle and not from the center part. So by getting rid of that center a little bit, you're reducing drag. Okay, so a little bit of technique I'm going to be using. The first thing I'm going to be doing is doing something called floating. And so I give my hand just a little bit of moisture, whether that's a little bit of wood ash or water or just a little spit. And then I begin floating. And so floating is when you're actually just like this. You're on the very top of your spindle and you're not doing any passes where you're going down. You're just up here staying in the same position. The way you do that is by rocking your hands back and forth and your fingers going from the back of your palm and then reverse, you know, back and forth, from back of palm, boom, boom, boom. And that keeps your hand in the same place. And the advantage of doing floating is every time you make a pass, even though you get a little bit of extra, downward pressure and friction from doing a pass. Every time you do a pass, you got to stop and reset. And when you stop, that's heat that's escaping. So floating allows you to just maintain movement, maintain friction a little bit longer and consistently. And it can be good for just helping to warm up your hearthboard. So I'll start out with doing a little bit of floating, then I'll make a few passes. I may float a little bit more and make a couple more passes or something. We'll just feel it out. But yeah, the key is really squeezing that spindle between your hands as hard as you can, and then just cranking on it and using the full length of your hand, not just using a tiny little portion of your hand. You want to spin that spindle through the full length of your hand. Utilize what you got. And you just really got to be assertive with it. You know, if you're timid with it, it's not going to work. So you really got to crank it, and it's one of those things that a lot of practice will help give you a feel for. All right, so I'm going to give it a go. Whoop. Oh. Did manage to get a coal. I broke my hearthboard there, but I did get a coal. Just going to transfer that into my nest. It's a very small, very delicate coal. Now I'm just going to give it some very light controlled breath. Want that wind to be coming from my back. Allows for more oxygen to the nest and keeps the smoke out of my face. Alright, so we got a flame. Now I'm just gonna slowly get my fire going. Alright, so I'm gonna take my smallest sticks, the smaller than matchstick thickness, and I'm gonna apply those first. Just a few at a time. I'm going to spread them out and just really add them here. Alright, now as those little sticks are burning, I'm just going to slowly start adding the matchstick thickness twigs. Just want to be careful, you don't want to overburden it right from the beginning. And that can lead to smothering out your tinder nest. You want to make sure it has ample oxygen. Alright, now I'm just going to start adding some of these slightly larger than matchstick thickness twigs. These are probably a little closer to a pencil thickness. more or less. And having all these sticks on hand really is a game changer when making your fire. It's no fun to get your fire going and then scramble to find a bunch of twigs laying around your area. This just makes it a much more enjoyable process, much less stressful process. Alright, now I'm just going to move on to my last little bundle of sticks I had there. These are about pinky thickness. Alright, so there's the hand drill from start to finish. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And yeah, see you all next time. Thanks for watching.